So that is why these leopards were here. Now, I wouldn't be surprised that Tiani caught this impala and it's now been stolen from her by her mom, Salayexe. So Salayexe is here. So Volpa and Wolf Girl, you were asking about seeing Salayexe. So she is here, and hopefully we will find her. And actually, I can see her now in front. You see her there, Senzo? Just behind the vehicle. She's sitting there. So if you go, there we go. So she's just moving around in the bush there. We will try and find a better place. Now we are going to go into our fake ad break, so I might go quiet for a few seconds. But it is Salayexe as far as I know, and we'll try, like I say, get a little bit closer, but it is very shady there, so I'm hoping she's not going to lie in that long grass and we'll be able to see her. Now, we're going to stay with this female, and hopefully she might come up towards the carcass, and while we do that, we're going to go for a short little break. We'll see you all soon. Alright, so there we go. That was our little ad break. Now we're back live with you guys, and as you can see, we didn't go away anywhere, but I'm going to try and just position myself a little bit better that we can actually see Salayexe in all her glory, because she is a beautiful, beautiful individual. And like I say, this is not a normal area for her. She doesn't normally come this far east, so I'm quite surprised that she's in this area. It's not an area that we would generally associate her with, and it could be because Shadow is denning, and Shadow has moved more towards sort of Hofmann's side and is using that area for where her cub is, that Salayexe is now moving into this area and utilizing this space. And like I say, it's probably to do with the fact that Tiani had a kill and now Salayexe has stolen it, or Salayexe made the kill and Tiani still wants to try and feed off kills from her mom. But she has been separated, and I know that Salayexe has been mating quite a bit. She doesn't look like she's pregnant, but let's have a look at Salayexe instead of me, because she's far more prettier than I am. And you can see she's now found herself in the shade. So I believe a lot of you are excited to see her. And isn't she beautiful? She's also one of my favorite leopards. When I was at Simambili, this was a leopard that we saw almost every day. She spent a lot of time in the camp. I used to walk into her quite often in the camp, so I've spent countless hours with her, and she really is a beautiful, beautiful individual, and one that is really very, very relaxed around vehicles. And she's been a great mom to Tiani. She's had such bad luck prior to Tiani with a lot of different males in her territory that have made it very, very tough for her to raise cubs successfully, and so she did really well with Tiani, and that sort of combined with Anderson being so dominant in this area has allowed for her to raise Tiani to adulthood. And I'm hoping that she will be pregnant and have another cub, and the fact that she's in areas like this is really a great sign for us, and in terms of us seeing more of Salayexe, it should be really, really good. She'll probably now shift into these areas, and if she does have a cub, she will definitely mark out this territory and try and keep Shadow out of it. So we might start seeing Salayexe a little bit more, which is great news for all of us. You can see she really is a regal, beautiful female, still in the prime of her life. I think she's about 10 now, if I remember correctly, and so she is in absolute prime. And wouldn't it be nice if she shifted into Arathusa and Shadow came into Djuma, and we got to see the two of them quite a bit? If indeed Karula is gone, it would be really, really nice if those two sort of ended up as our two females that we saw a lot of. And the nice thing about Salayexe is that she is really just such a relaxed individual, and to find her is often quite easy because she likes to walk around, and when she sort of does, she's not phased if a vehicle comes along, and she doesn't like hiding too much. She's often out in the open, and she loves lying in the boughs of these marula trees, so you often find her up in trees as well, which makes it obviously a lot easier to spot than something like Shadow, who tends to move around more in the thickets and is a little bit more elusive. But you can see she's really full and starting to pant already. That impala has been consumed quite a bit, so I would imagine that both leopards had a really good feed off it, and they've been here for probably more than a day. So yesterday, I would imagine, is when they killed this, and they've now consumed through the night, and I'm pretty sure Tiani would have a very, very full belly. When we leave Salayexe a little bit later, I'm going to try and see if I can't find Tiani. I'm sure she hasn't gone too far. So, Wicked Ange, you're wondering if she's going to be moving into Karula's territory. Well, I don't think so. Karula's territory is still sort of quite far from where we are now, and at the end of the day, we're in sort of Shadow's area at the moment. So I think if anything, she's pushing Shadow further to the east, which means Shadow would go more into Karula's territory than what Salayexe would go. But you can see she's a very big female. She's much larger than Shadow and Tundi. She's really quite a big girl. So her genetics with Anderson produces these massive females. I'm sure Tiani is going to be bigger than her. The last time I saw Tiani, she was about the same size as her mom already. So I'm hoping that she's going to sort of keep growing, and maybe they'll produce another sort of set of cubs. But isn't she beautiful? I wonder where she's off to. Maybe she's trying to find some shade. A bit nervous of all of the sun that's now raining down. I'm going to try and see if I can't keep up with her. The other thing about Salayexe is she likes to walk. She's not a female that sort of hangs around too much. When she does decide to walk, she can walk quite far. So we're going to try and keep up with her in this thicket. And while we do that, let's go across to Steph and see where he is and whether he's walking at the rate that she is. She's now on the move again. She's settled for a few seconds in the shade, and now she's decided to move again. But it is not easy to negotiate this area that we're in. There's a lot of very spiny branches that I'm trying to sort of get around and get through, and Salayexe is not making it very easy. She keeps kind of moving and trying to get into a new area, and I'm sure she's just trying to find a bit of shade. Now, Senzo, did you see where she went? She went this way. Okay. Ah, there she is. It's also the problem when you've got such long grass like this. They disappear in a second. Now, hopefully she's going to settle here. Looks like at least a nice sort of openish section that we can see her. So I believe a lot of you are sending in lots of screenshots of her, which is great. She really is a beautiful female. In fact, I'm just going to try to go back slightly, Senzo, because you've got that branch in her face. In fact, let's go forward a bit so we can give the others a chance to also see her. And I'm sure we're going to find a nice gap here. There we go, that's better, Senzo. So, just trying to get everybody into the right places, but there we go. Hopefully she's going to now settle down a little bit and won't drag us around this thicket too much more. But you can see that she's panting quite heavily. That's because of the amount of food that's pushing up on her stomach and onto her lungs, and so she's going to be taking much shorter breaths, and also she'll develop quite a bit of heat. It's starting to get quite warm now. It was cold to start the day, but it is now starting to get quite hot, and so for a female that's been eating and going up and down trees and potentially having a bit of a sort of growl and hiss at her daughter, she might have built up a bit of excess heat and is now just trying to get rid of that. So, Winter Prism, I don't think you'll... So, in terms of her relations, she comes from a sort of different lineage to what Karula does. She's not in all related to Karula. She comes from... Her mother was a Siseka, and then her sort of... I'm just trying to think who her brother was. There was a male that was with her at some point. I can't remember his name. But that she comes from Siseka as her mother, so she's not from Safari lineage, and I think Siseka in some way was related to Safari, but I know there's some out there that will be able to help us with this, so remember #SafariLive, and you can tell us what the exact lineage of Salayexe is. I just know who her mom is, and then her daughter is in Sele, and Sele's daughter is in Chile, which we have seen on Safari Live before, but the rest of them we wouldn't have seen. Just trying to think now who the other females would be that would be related to her. It all gets quite complicated after a while, and the lineages of all these different leopards, when you start going back generations, becomes quite tough to remember who's who. And it was before my time with Safari and Siseka were young, so I'm not 100% sure if they were actually related. That's right. Okay, now I remember. So Aqua, thank you very much for that. You say that their mothers were sisters, so that's right. So Seka and Safari were sisters, and so they, I suppose, are part of the same lineage then. They're just cousins, and you can see what's interesting about it is that she's actually a little bit bigger than Karula, so she's quite a lot larger, and she's one of the biggest females that I've seen in the Sabi Sands. She's got quite a bulky sort of body, and so it's interesting that Karula was slightly smaller, and Karula's offspring tends to be quite small. So if you look at Tundi and Shadow, they tend to be very, very small females, whereas Salayexe's female, both in Sele and Tiani, are quite big girls. So it's interesting that even though they come from the same mother in the long run, that there's a difference between their babies that they have.
Well, I've got his face is right here. It's in the bush.
But it's all getting very, very tiring now. She's starting to fall asleep a little bit, so her eyes are starting to close, and I think she's going to probably end up sleeping in exactly the position that she's in now. She's got a nice shady spot, and she's using the sort of cover of a wattle, which has got nice sort of thick leaves and provides really good shade. And so as the sun moves, she can just move with the shade, and from here she can still keep an eye out on that carcass. Because of where the carcass is in the tree, it's quite high up. It means that she can sit quite far away and still see what's going on. And if Tiani comes back, then she can then potentially go and compete with Tiani. Remember that even though they're mother and daughter, they are still competing with one another now that they've broken apart. Now I believe Taylor has found a very, very cute little bird to show all of you. So let's go across quickly before it disappears. Well, Stefan, I think any buffalo that just chose to tangle with you would be a very stupid buffalo. Stefan is made of, I would say, leadwood, and is far harder than a buffalo anyway, so don't worry, Steph, you'll be just fine. But yes, this is a far nicer sighting. I must be honest, I'll take a leopard over a buffalo any day of the week. They are far prettier animals, and Salayexe is still just taking it very easy. She's grooming a little bit and has just sort of settled in for the day, which is really nice, and we're in kind of the prime spot. She's come and settled quite close to us, so very, very happy to see her again. It's like seeing an old friend. It's amazing how it goes like this. You kind of spend so much time with these animals that when you don't see them for a long time, you end up missing them. And earlier we were talking about Karula, and yesterday we were watching a few clips of her and the cubs, and there was almost like a collective sigh in the room, because it was all the presenters and the FC girls and cameramen, and there was this kind of collective sort of sigh and hush that everybody sort of went quiet, and Jamie then said, you know, that she misses her, and everybody kind of agreed. And it's amazing how we actually form these kind of attachments to these cats, and it's an incredible thing to be a part of it, and to be able to see this every single day, and to be able to spend time with these individuals, that you actually get to know them that well. It really is a very big privilege. And so seeing Salayexe after not seeing her for the last sort of 4 months is really, really, really good, and makes me very, very happy indeed. So Stanley, or Stanley trifecta, you want to know whether I think her face looks like a lioness's face. I'm not sure, Stanley. I don't know if I see that. She has a slightly more elongated face than that of Shadow and Tundi. Shadow and Tundi seem to have that sort of very short muzzle, whereas Salayexe's does come out a little bit more, I suppose, like a lion's would. But I'm not sure I would call it a lion face. She's not that big, and I suppose in real life it looks a little bit different to on a camera, but she does have a slightly longer muzzle that could give that impression, but in real life I don't see it at all. She still looks very sort of petite female leopard to me. So I suppose, like I say, it's anyone's sort of individual opinion as to what a leopard looks like. It's also, we were talking about spot patterns yesterday morning with Hasana, and everyone has a different sort of pattern that they'll use to identify, you know, leopards. And I suppose looking at a facial feature, they'll also remind people of certain things. But what's caught your attention? She all of a sudden sort of popped her head up. She was sleeping, and I wonder if there's maybe not something around. I was watching her just now while we were off air, and she was looking into the skies, making sure there weren't any vultures creeping around towards her carcass. So I think she's just alert that there are others around, and potentially other leopards could be here as well. So That's maybe why she's sort of quite alert as to what's going on, but there we go, she's gone back to sleep, and I'm pretty sure that's how she's going to stay for the remainder of the morning. But what is great about this is that there's more than enough at that carcass that she will still be here tonight or this afternoon and probably till tomorrow. So it's going to be really good for us, and should have a leopard at least for the next 2 drives, which is fantastic. So, Julia, this is an interesting one. You want to know, when sort of observing a leopard, what is the most unique behavior compared to other cats? Well, I think probably the most unique thing about a leopard is the fact that they are so solitary all the time. So watching them go about their business when they're just kind of doing everything on their own. So as a female leopard, having to find food, go back, suckle, come back to the food, make sure that it's not stolen by hyenas, and having to move around and survive in this environment without the help of anybody else must be really, really tough. So that is probably one of the most unique factors with a leopard. The other thing with them is just how stealthy they can be and how easily they can camouflage. I've followed countless leopards where you are right behind them and they just decide that they don't want to be followed anymore, and they just turn, and within 5 minutes you've lost them and you can't find them again for the life of you. Even though there's 3 vehicles with lights and all kinds of things, it's often really tough to find them. So there's sort of the way that they can just blend in and conceal themselves, and that sort of that cunningness to be able to actually move and get into areas where they know they can't be seen is really what makes them sort of very special to me. And like I say, the fact that they have to live this solitary life is really, really quite tough. And you can imagine how hard it must be out here when there's so many other predators, there's so many things that could potentially kill you or harm your cubs or steal your food. It must be a really, really hard existence to be a solitary cat out in the African bush. Now she's popped her head up because another vehicle has arrived, and it's another one of my old friends now. The gentleman that has arrived now is, firstly, one is my old tracker, who is Derek, and then the other one is Enoch, who I used to work with when I was at Lion Sands. So both of them I know very, very well, and it's really good to see their faces. I haven't seen Enoch's face in about 3 years, so I'm quite happy to see him. So really nice that they're both here. Have very fond memories of spending time with both Enoch and Derek, who is, like I say, my old tracker. And Derek and I used to have some great experiences actually with Salayexe. We spent quite a lot of time tracking her together and found her many, many times. And I once watched him walking down the road, and Salayexe was just in front of him, and they walked together down the road, and she paid no attention to him. She glanced over her shoulder every now and then, and he would just kind of follow in behind her. It was quite an amazing scene to watch. So it's really good when you see old friends, both animal and people. But she'll just have popped her head up just because of the sort of squeakiness of the car and the car moving in, and you'll find she'll go back to sleep fairly shortly again. She's not going to spend too much time moving around now. It is starting to get much warmer, the sun is getting quite high, and ultimately she does have herself a really, really nice spot. But isn't she beautiful? She's got those very light, sort of honey-coloured eyes. I really, really think she's one of the sort of prettier leopards that we have out here. Not that there is an ugly leopard anyway, really. Leopards are generally very pretty animals. Funnily enough, the last time I actually saw her was from the lodge at Tsimamili. She was walking across the deck there, and it was interesting. We replaced the deck at Tsimamili, and we took the old deck out, and we used to see her there every now and then, and we put the new one in, and it wasn't even about 2 days of the new one being in there, and we found her and Tiani on the deck itself, and it was almost like they had come to investigate what this new sort of building was in their territory, and they were making sure that they got first rights to it and scent marked it. And we came in for morning coffee, and as we came around the corner, there were these 2 leopards just staring at us off the main deck. It was quite entertaining. Some of the staff ended up running back, but with her, she's so relaxed with that because she's grown up around the lodges. She was actually born at Tsimamili, and she's had multiple litters of cubs there. It means that she's so used to people walking around on foot, much like Shongile, that she really doesn't matter too much. Now, I think we're going to probably carry on. I'm going to try to see if I can't find Tiani somewhere here. So while we do that, let's go across to Steph, who's looking at the finer things in life.